You can do it.
I'm gonna talk about
Good afternoon. Yes. Calling to order the work session, the Board of Education special meeting for Tuesday, December 16th. And we have a quorum. There's Gary. We have a quorum. And we will start with our introduction of guests. And let's start, Cass. We'll start with you and we'll kind of go that way.
Hi, I'm Cass Sinclair, Executive Director of the RCC Foundation. Good evening, I'm Kelly Gonzalez. I'm the Director of Marketing and Communications.
Hello, Isam Mohammed, Executive Director, Institutional Effectiveness and Planning.
Evan Barger and User Support Specialist too.
Richard Plott, CIO.
Mike Pollock, CFO.
Lisa Parks, Business and Workforce.
Nicole Secreta, Dean of Enrollment Management.
Steve Phillips, Dean of Instruction for Applied Technology.
David Kohler, Vice President, Learning and Success.
Jamie Harrington, Vice President, People, Culture, and Safety.
Lisa Stanton, Vice President of Operations and Finance.
Well, today's program will be Dr. Mohammed sharing with us an update on accreditation planning as well as timeline for our strategic planning efforts that are months and year ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the board. I haven't seen you guys in like 2 months, so I'm glad we're all here. I did want to share, as the president mentioned, big things which are coming up. Starting with accreditation. We are in the 7th year of our 7-year cycle with NWCCU. And we got a firm date on when they're going to send their accreditation visiting team. So I'll start with those dates. We know that NWCCU's team will be here October 26th through the 29th next year. We also confirmed just about an hour ago, which is why the president didn't know about it, that our self-study will have to be submitted by August 31st. So those are the big dates on which we're working back. We learned of this, the visit about a month ago or so, a month and a half ago. And by the way, once I'm done, I'll pass out a handout so you have the bullet points with you. The College Effectiveness Council is serving as the steering committee for the process. And we have already met a couple of times. We also have set out an agenda to meet every month going forward the rest of the year for 2026. I think it is important to keep that agenda on so that there's monitoring of progress. If there are issues which come up, those are addressed and so on. So what progress has happened so far? I mentioned the CEC is serving as a steering committee. In addition to that, we have already set up a Teams, Microsoft Teams instance, a hub, where the documentation, some of the documentation is there, the writing has started, evidence is being collected, and the question and answer between the members as needed, that'll start there as well. We have also assigned responsibilities for champions of those 4 major criteria and the 20 sub-criteria for it. There's also a centralized internet website we have set up where evidence is being collected and there's already stuff there, including members of the board who's in that. We also had an initial coordination meeting I did with our liaison in Seattle at the NWCCU conference on the sides of it last week. And things are going pretty good according to, and I agree with it. So where are we with the board communication right now? While in this process, the board doesn't play a very direct role in it, it does play in. Two things stand out about the board. One of them is that, well, you need to know that this being the process it is and how important it is that we're doing our stuff so that a month out, you don't hear nothing has happened. Where have you been? So my plan is going forward that every month, or in some cases when nothing happens, every other month, I'll be at least letting you know this is how far we have done and this is where we are. The other part of the process where the board comes in, closer to the visit, we'll know what the team wants to do. If they want to meet with you together, if they want to meet with some of you, as soon as I know, I'll let you know, so you can put it in. And I suspect there'll be some meetings. Where it is, when it is, we'll certainly make sure that you know about it. One of the other things we have done, just as a good faith effort, is they wanted in an office space for those 3 days they're here. There were certain conditions and special needs they had. We have arranged that, so they already have an office space with AB and those kind of things. So they're pretty good to go on that. So beyond that, what happens as we move forward? In late spring or late winter, early spring, we'll have some open forums for the faculty on both campuses, and actually I'm thinking of probably on all 3 campuses, so that they can come in and let us know what else needs to be put into the assurance argument if we are missing something. At the same time, we can ask them that this is what we're putting in. Are we missing something? So it's a two-way conversation. It is inclusive, and it is something which NWCCU does recommend. We will have that open process. Once move into summer, when the instructional employees are out, we'll also be doing the same thing for non-instructional, so that we are spreading out what we are doing, we are getting the information we need, and as inclusive as possible. That brings up the point, well, beyond that, what about the rest of the college? As we get closer to it, I'm expecting, I shared with you that August 31st is when we expect the self-assurance argument to be done, to be submitted. That's a deadline. Hope to beat it by a week or so at least. That gets us close to the President's in-service announcement for fall. That's where the President is going to mention that. I'm telling my boss what to do, imagine that. Hopefully he'll mention it, and we'll kind of get a pick up on that as well. By that time, it has been submitted. We'll have a 1-page or perhaps a 2-page summary of all that is included in the self-study. That way, everybody's playing for the same playbook. That will be distributed across campus, and we'll have some drop-in sessions when people want to come in and ask, well, could you clarify this, or could I know more? But also, in other direction, that I want everybody to see that, well, this is what we have submitted, and this is how everybody's individual work aligns to it. So not only are we singing from the same hymn book, but also seeing where our individual notes are in those hymns. So together, what I look for here, what I'm looking at, and I know you are as well, it is a compliance effort. It is a requirement. But far more than that, this is also an immense opportunity to tell our story and our successes and the great things we have done in the last 7 years. And you know this, you've been part of it. We have done some incredible things. And certainly this is an opportunity where I intend to take it. I know you will too, to shout it from the rooftops. I have very little doubt that we'll come out of this with flying colors and have another 7 years of greatness and opportunity in front of us. So with that, I'm going to stop for a little bit and ask you what questions you have for me. I'll even take the hard ones.
I'm going to ask you to frame just a little bit more before we ask for maybe individual questions from the board. Talk a little bit procedurally around, like, so we've submitted a PERFR, what that is and what that meant, what the visit itself will be designed around. So like any response to that, as well as the specific criteria that's designed for. And I'm thinking along the lines of like logistically with the visit, how, right, typically we're going to the other third thing is, right, is the response to our finding from our previous report. So those kind of 3 criteria we know we'll be prepared to respond to. But what they will do is then they say, okay, given the evidence we've seen thus far, we want to have these conversations with these populations. And then that's where we in some instances we say, oh, we want you, welcome to our campus. Let me tell you who we want you to talk to. That doesn't work. They say, we're excited to come to your campus and here's who we want to talk to. And so maybe if you would talk a little bit about procedurally how that works.
I'll be happy to. And I'll take the last one first, because I did share with you that we are going to hear from them. Here are the list of people we want to talk to, some members of the board, maybe the entire board. Maybe not, but there will be a list. And generally, it is part of some of the leadership they want to talk to either in a group or sometimes one-on-one. And they certainly do want to talk to certain parts of campus. I expect them to want to talk to our assessment folks, for example. They will want to talk to a cross-section, especially those in student services, in advising most likely, members of the faculty, and the leadership. We'll get a list. I'm being told about 6 weeks out, we'll know. And at that point, I can share it. And then we set up those meetings with them. They're, in some ways, they're prescriptive about it. But yeah, we get to know. I was just on a visit on the other side of the table that, yeah, we did send out. And there are times when, what happens when somebody's not available. And generally they're flexible about it, but they'll also say, well, in the case this person is not, how about that person? So that brings up, I mentioned assessment. That is part of the process in almost every accreditation visit everywhere. We had our last accreditation visit about 7 years ago. It was pretty good. There was one finding which they wanted us to address. It was surrounding assessment. At that time, we were building up. I mean, it was a new thing in a systemic manner. We were building it up, and over time, we have addressed some of those. They have said, well, okay, this part you have addressed, this part you have addressed. There's still a small part of it which is outstanding, which we have addressed, which will be presenting during this visit. So what this particular visit does, it involves standard 1, which is about student achievement and advising and assessment, governance. The other part of it is it only about standard 1? Probably not. Officially it is. So here's the asterisk part of it. In year 6, which was last year, and I shared this with you, we also did what we call the PORFR, which is policies, regulations, and implementation. But that takes care of standard 2, the 2 standards. At this time, we have not heard from them. If there were any findings on PORFR, chances are there will be some. It is very normal to have some findings. If there are, I'm told we'll know about it sometimes in January. They will expect us to address those in this year 7 report as well. So even before we get to standard 1, we'll be addressing those 2 things. What is outstanding from last year about assessment from the last 7-year cycle, and anything outstanding from PORFR. Haven't heard anything. I suspect there'll be some. So it becomes a pretty comprehensive look at what these are things we found, and these are the standard things we're still going to be looking at.
How many standards are there? I'm sure you probably told us at one time, but
that's a good question. There are 2 standards. And
okay,
that sounds very little, just 2. But each of them have
2.
Yeah. You know how it is. And it's standard 1. Standard 1 has total of 4 substandards and 20 substandards. And the same with standard 2. So they end up being we're looking at 45 different sub-criteria there.
And how many people actually come on site to do the visit?
Between 3 and 5.
Okay.
Right. Let's settle at 4.
No, 5 is good.
3 to 5. And I think that we'll probably have about 5 because we're pretty close to them. You never know. What other questions can I answer for you? Yes, sir.
It might be, I might not have this correct, but I'm always operating with the assumption there's like a mid-cycle review. So that's happened. We're on the backside of that. We had questions, we had findings that we had to address then. Has that all gone okay? I'm sure it would have, or we would have heard something about it.
And we've gotten a few reports over the last
I know.
3 years about where we are in those.
The mid-cycle review went well, but again, we still had that finding outstanding from the previous 7-year review. And what they did was in the mid-cycle review, they said, well, here are the things, they're good. Yeah, the finding that we had, you addressed half of it, there's still some
Right.
outstanding. And then in a subsequent meeting, most of that was gone, but there was still a part of it outstanding. So the answer is yes, it went well. We still have an outstanding thing, which I'm confident this time we'll have it addressed fully.
It's not about anybody on the board like Roger, is it?
We wouldn't want that.
Yeah, yeah.
One of the things that we did here during the mid-cycle visit, and that was my first fall here, so it's kind of resonated with me since, is and it's common to hear during an accreditation visit. Well, I think you've got some really good things going on.
Yeah.
But I don't know that it's systemic, because what they do is they test for it in all these separate meetings. Like, tell me about this, and they're looking for consistency, or, did the 3 champions of that tell you about it, or did 30? So when you're talking about assessment and student learning, like, how embedded within the institution is it? And so there are schools that prepare, more effectively than others, and we will be preparing in a way. And that's a little bit where Esam referenced like the 1 or 2 pager. Once we figure out what meetings that they intend to have, what we historically have done is say, hey, go read the reports, go read the
Yeah.
assurance statements and all this stuff. And people often are busy and neglect to do so. So we're going to kind of create, hey, on this, here's a reminder of some evidence of the things we do. So the idea is institutionally, this is how we do it. Now, let me tell you how I do it in my class. So there's still that personalization to it, but we're taking some of the creative liberties away from people, because people often get tempted to say, well, let me sensationalize the heck out of this. And the visitor's like, well, tell me more. And then that's when they start looking for it. So we really just want to lock it down for people. And my hopes are, particularly around this visit, that we because what they'll do is they'll read the last mid-cycle review too, prior to coming, and they're like, well, what did we learn last time? And so I want them to be able to respond in a way to say, efforts across the college have become more systemic and more understood. And there's, I believe it to be true, and there's ways to coach to that response also.
Right. Basically, get your story straight.
Something like that.
It'll turn out to be, if averages are any indication, we're looking at anywhere between 70 to 120 pages, which doesn't include the evidence. So the president is right. Not a whole lot of people read 70 to 120 pages unless they're insomniacs. So practically, it makes a lot of sense to have 1 or 2 pager with bullet points. So everybody knows our story. We are not hiding anything.
Right.
This is what our story is. And this is your personal story, how that connects, or your professional story to this. So we are telling the same story in our different ways, but it's still the same story. And it's a story of success and opportunity.
And 7 years is a long time. If something happened in year 1 or 2, you're not remembered. Right, so having the
Yeah, having
evidence
that
to
history.
show here's the history and what's been done over the last little bit. It's a good idea.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, Madam Chairman. One of the things we have in our team's instance as well, we have added all the previous reports there. So if somebody wants to go back and take a look, I need to take a look. And there are times I've been needing to take a look. It's all in one place. So consolidating that evidence and that documentation in one place.
Esam, could you give me the date again, the visit?
The visit will be October 26th through the 29th. Monday through Thursday.
Thank you.
So rather, somebody asked me that in September, and I said that you mean next month? It's 2026.
Are there any anticipated? Got alarmed on that one.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah, it's okay. I know the hard work that's been done, the reports that we've been given. From what I hear from you right now, things are going exactly as we anticipate as far as evidence and meeting the standards and all of those things with minimal findings, hopefully.
Yes, I am feeling very confident, not cocky, but confident. And things sometimes happen, you bet. But so far, not just me, but others who have been involved in it, who are involved in it, and they're feeling cautiously optimistic and confident as well. If something comes out, you bet you'll get to know it firsthand.
One of the things we've seen Northwest spotlight, and I will say, our accrediting agency is quite a bit behind other accrediting agencies on, is leveraging peer comparison data. And so they put this expectation on us, and so that's something that's a little less mature.
Okay.
And you know, our team's working hard to build and connect and do that, but we won't have cycles of how we've used it, how we've compared it, that you would often see in other environments. And a lot of it is, in order to have peer comparison data, you have to have a lot of standards that how do you commonly define this? And there's some work going on amongst Northwest institutions, and ESOM is working with other institutions to do this. And again, this is an example where members of Northwest Association are a bit further behind than you might see at a HLC or a SACS or others that have pushed pretty hard on coming up with this data. So I a lot of, you know, evaluators are humans, and they show up, and you still have that humanistic approach. I will say in our last experience, we had somebody who was very academic, provost kind of driven, and we saw a lot of those questions getting asked very much through that lens, maybe some more than we saw through the more universal evaluator lens. That's not an uncommon experience, is for people to ask through what they know. So, you know, I was always told, you don't argue with auditors, and you don't argue with the creditors. You listen, but it can get tricky sometimes when they're struggling to grasp your interpretation, because your accrediting agency will, what they don't do is they don't tell you this is what correct looks like. They will tell you, you're not there yet, you need to go this direction. But people are like, just show me the cheat code, show me what you want. I'm like, well, we're not going to do that. And one of the things that we've given feedback at their annual conference that's different with Northwest that you would see at other accrediting conferences is, at other conferences, you would see presentations on high performing standards, like this institution received accolades for this standard. And we don't do that at Northwest. So you can't even see like what good looks like in a presentation format in a way that you would often see and with other accreditors. And so they heard that feedback a couple conferences in a row, and there's new leadership. We kind of hope that that there's enough of us giving that feedback that they can take advantage of it. But it's really a missed opportunity for schools trying to move the needle on a standard to see an example of what good looks like.
And to the president's point, I'll add, this closes a loop for me as well. One of the first months that I was here, what I presented to you, if you remember, I'm sure you remember everything, was the fact that we had built up a comparator website with proximal peers and distal peers. I'm pretty proud of it, but again, as the president said, it's the first time we are doing it, so there'll be some cycles. But that is something we'll be presenting to them. But now we have a systemic set of peers. These are the metrics we are looking at. These are the ones that we are comparing ourselves with because they're similar, and these are the ones who are a little better. So there's a system in place which we can use in the coming cycles. And those numbers will be updated as IPEDS releases new numbers in February. We intend to update them and bring it back. I can go now.
No.
You want to give an update on strategic planning timeline and efforts? Yeah.
And if there are questions on the on accreditation, just shoot me an email. Be happy to. So related to that is because we had talked to you about strategic planning as well. The next strategic plan, tentatively, we expect it to start with the academic/fiscal year 2028, which is about July, August of 27, and that remains unchanged. What we are changing a little bit is kind of the planning timeline leading up to it. And that's due a few reasons. One of them is, well, there's an accreditation visit, and we want people to be focused on that a little bit. Also, the feasibility or potential lack thereof of the non-campaign, so that went into our calculation as well. And finally, our own facilities planning efforts, we are moving a few things around. So that necessitated a little bit of change, kind of pushing it back from the previous timeline. So right now, what we're looking at as next steps in kind of your engagement is at the next retreat, summer of 2026, thinking we're looking at about July as we form it up. We want to present to you a concept paper of a new kind of a strategic plan, but also an outline of an environmental scan which helps you put it in context. It'll kind of, if you think about it, it kind of serves as a soft launch for the new strategic planning process, at least. So this concept, it's a little different than traditionally we have been used to, or most other institutions have been used to. What we're still finalizing it, but what you will see is an emphasis on not only the plan part of it, but the strategic part of it too. So it is not just plan, it is strategic plan. We expect it to be simpler and nimbler. In other words, instead of looking at probably 30 pages, we may be looking at 5 or 6 pages. At least that's kind of the vision we are looking. And certainly shorter in duration. I think and we have discussed this in the past, that the days where 5 and 7 and 10-year plans happen, they're in the past. It doesn't work that well. The world changes a little faster than we were used to. So the concept is designed to reflect a world which is rapidly changing, an environment which is changing pretty fast. And we're probably 3 years, maybe the maximum that a plan should be in effect. But most importantly, the focus of it. We want to unify the focus into one kind of a theme, which is unifying across the board. And it's grounded in the reality that really a majority of our learners who come here for a simple but not an easy purpose. And the simple purpose is they want to make their lives better. There may be some exceptions, but 9 out of 10 learners, in their own ways, they want to make their lives better. They come here, when they get out, they have an expectation to be slightly better. What that better looks like changes between different student populations. For some, it is economic. For some, it is more flexibility in life. For some, it is a better balance, work-life balance. But whatever it is a better life in their minds. So the key challenge and opportunity as we develop the strategic plan with you is going to be, well, how do you define making lives better for different student populations? And then how do you measure those outcomes which define them? And finally, measuring those outcomes that align to our operational plans in all the divisions and also our accreditation standards. So there is a connection with accreditation here, which our board policy calls for. So what we are looking for at your retreat is having a robust discussion with you, getting your input, and then based on that, starting the process which leads us to a strategic plan for the year 28 to 30, which reflects those things. That it is nimbler, it's simpler, and most important than anything, it reflects the reality that their learners who come here, they come here for a purpose, and that is to make their lives better. And as their lives are better, the quality of life in the valley is better. I know that sounds, hey, that's a huge lift. Well, that's what we are here for. It is an opportunity.
And I really do like the idea of giving some separation between the accreditation, getting all of that done before we really jump into this next thing. Like, to me, being in K-12 world, right? It's like when we have ELA adoption right next to math adoption, you're trying to get everything done at once. That's not a good plan, not great planning. So for me, I really like that idea. And you're right, the world changes so fast. 5, 7 years, we don't even know what jobs are going to be out there necessarily to make their life better in 5 to 6.
Yes.
So.
And I appreciate you saying that. And I'll be the first to admit that initially I was thinking, well, let's do it. I mean, let's do both things together. The president is a wiser man than I am. No, let's have a little bit of distance.
Yeah.
And it makes sense. We want to be able to focus on both things without losing track of time.
And making sure they're integrated well together.
Yes.
So from the board's perspective, I think what you'll be observing and participating in is from an accreditation standpoint, you'll be observing a lot of internal work and preparation and receiving over the next several months updates from ESOM on progress to give you a certain level of confidence. From a strategic plan, that's a little bit more where it'll be earlier on, more participatory. So as he referenced, we anticipate using the board retreat day this summer to really dig into this work. And so in order to dig into it, what we're seeing is we'll want to do environmental scans, visit the board's perspective on where we are with mission, vision, values, and some kind of core preliminary stuff. It will be less decision making and more, okay, guidance, right direction, wrong direction, are we kind of heading here? And then what that will allow, so to that point, when we think about environmental scan and that, some of the feedback will be, are we reaching out to the right community partners? Do you have people in the community that you think we should be reaching out? What should we be asking the community on? So as we approach the environmental scan and before we do it, you might see some feedback on that. Is this the feedback that you'd like to see us get from the community to help make sure that as stewards of community resources, you've got the information you need so we can do the work. And so we get that environmental scan, we've got some internal stuff at your board retreat. Then from there, we're like, okay, now we've got some good foundational materials to do more of the public strategic planning work. And that works well because it's on the tail end of the accreditation stuff. So now internal audience is coming off of accreditation. We kind of have some of that feedback and we can let them take a really quick breath and then engage them in internal community conversations around the work you do. How does it contribute to the community? So we end the calendar year with community input, board check-in, internal input, so we can start saying, okay, what does this look like, feel like document wise? So have we been going kind of the right direction and we need to pivot a little bit, or do we need to change the whole trajectory of what our future strategic plan should be? So that's kind of timeline wise, and then it'll allow us to land something April, May-ish, somewhere in there before the end of the academic year, where and Esam referenced this a little bit. I thought we were going to be really leading edge by maybe doing a more nimble and more of a North Star goal strict planning process. However, the more I listen to some of my peers who have recently gone through strategic planning, they've already kind of done so too. I mean, like, this is not just like epiphany. He referenced, right, we need to be more agile and nimble in today's world. And anybody, honestly, I've heard talk about doing a plan in the last 18 months, talk about a more revised, nimble, and I hear I'm sure people have done the traditional plans, but they're not the ones talking about theirs. They're the ones who just were kind of compliant and put it aside. So I think we're going to have some examples to reference. I think when we maybe meet in the summer, we can talk a little bit about strategically. This is kind of what we're looking to do for kind of a North Star goal. The ones that, yeah, you guys have probably, hopefully heard me reference this, and a lot of people have, and multiple times. I always like to think of it as the race to the moon, the space station. When Kennedy visited the space station and he asked the custodian, "What do you do?" He said, "I'm sending a man to the moon." That mentality, that I want any employee here. If we say we're building better lives in the Valley, then people, if they walked any employee here in payroll and said, "What do you do?" "Well, I build better lives in the Valley." And that their contribution and their work to the institution is in a way that whatever that is. But then from a strategic planning, we have to say, what does that mean? How do we assess, effort toward that? Does it mean that we're providing access to more students? Does it mean the students we get are more successful while they're here? Jamie and I were referencing some conversations we were in last week, and we were talking a little bit about hoping to bring the understanding with, community colleges been what we've historically called kind of 1.0, 2.0, 3.0. And community colleges were founded under the premise of access. We want to provide access to education. You go back as far as the GI Bill. I mean, that was really it. We had a bunch of soldiers returning, and we needed to do workforce training for them. So as community colleges were about access. And then, you know, you can go really kind of the teens. The Obama administration was really one that put a lot of pressure on. It's not good enough to provide access. What's happening with the students you get? So completion agenda became kind of a really big thing. And then more recently, people like, it doesn't matter if people are completing, if they're completing programs that don't lead to better lives and better jobs, then you're falling short of helping transform lives. So it's kind of become what we call community college 3.0. So it's that 3.0. We want access, completion, and now it's a post-participation success. And that's also the hardest thing to measure. It's the most important thing and the hardest thing, but there's work going on out there. We want to continue to push that balance. So we want to push as far up against that envelope as we can, that we can say, when you come to RCC, you're going to have a better life. And we have to figure out, how do we define that? What are the metrics? And we'll buy some time and do it. But then backfilling it with what are the early indicators, the continued metrics to get there. And that's where the devil will be in the details.
Other board members, do you have questions or wondering, or Maria or Gary? Okay.
Oh, I was gonna say, Randy already used my one about Kennedy and the space program, so I'm lost, so.
North Star goals,
Yes.
Race to the Moon, like there's a couple of those, but they are that whole, like that true north, that North Star, whatever it is, that people can connect to, you know, and a lot of times we use the phrase transform lives. The community colleges transform lives, and it feels good. But if you're going to have a strategic plan and you're going to allocate resources, you better define what that means and the work you're going to do to get there.
And to that, I'll add that, you know, and sometimes it sounds cheesy, better lives. But this is also community college, which belongs to the community. I mean, I've always asked myself, and sometimes stop myself using jargon. I still do it sometimes. But how do we connect to the community? I mean, average regular folks, they do understand bettering of lives. When I start getting into, well, the completion rate plus this rate, sometimes they get googly eyed. So we have to speak in the language of those who we belong to and communicate better. And this is one of the ways of doing it.
And I think in terms of like not only bettering the students' lives, but bettering the lives of the people in the valley. So by having more dental hygienists, by having more nurses, by having more CDL, automotive, like that improves the lives of everyone in the valley. Yes. That needs that access to those things. So I like that North Star, like you can fit everything under it.
All the good things, absolutely.
Yeah. Anything else for him?
Any questions about the board's role or the timeline with how that should progress?
I think you laid it out pretty well.
Yeah.
At some point, you'll give us a little timeline cheat sheet so we know what's coming up.
Absolutely. And you know, for the strategic planning process, as once we have the soft kickoff retreat, I think pretty quickly after that, we'll have a more filled out.
Maybe makes more sense.
Again, sure, that this is kind of where we are going, and it'll fill out from there after getting kind of your green light.
Yes. All right. Anything else for him? All right. Any questions? Question or answer of any items on the regular agenda? No,
we're good.
All right. Well, we will adjourn and we will reconvene at 5 o'clock.